All right, welcome everybody. Good to see you. Welcome to the continual search gathering, this continual search gathering. If you're new here, welcome. Some of you have been here a few times, so take a little drink. There's no structure for these gatherings. This is just a sharing. Yeah, so what we are pointing to today is really that there is no meaning to anything. There's no meaning to anything. The separated self gives a meaning to everything. And as it gives meaning to everything, it creates a story. So the separated self creates a story. And when the separated self creates a story, that's what the separated self calls its life. And that life that's called its story is what happens. We're not talking about something's right and something's wrong here. We're talking about how the separated self creates a meaning in a story. It's fine, but there is no meaning and there is no purpose. There is only a story from the separated self. Everything else is appearing to happen in a void of nothing, but that nothing void is everything that there is. So this is what we're talking about today. We're talking about this idea that when the separated self walks through the world, there's always a subject. Almost always, it's the the separated self, the I. I always think that that's a really great great experiment for you to walk around your life and just look at one day of your life and say, how many times did I say I today? I'm going to go do this. I'm thinking about that. I am hungry. I am angry. I'm going to think about that, because the separated self is obsessed with I. Yeah. And so today we're talking about this separated self that lives in this subject object reality. It's usually the I. There's me and my goals. There's me and my accomplishments. There's me and my failures. There's me and my depression. There's me and my body. There's me and my family. There's me and my environment. There's me and my politics. There's me. So subject object reality is what the separated self lives in. And like I said, is the separated self is living in this world that it has created, because even in that world it's created, the story that it creates is not even real, because the thing that it creates as its success, to someone else it's not a success at all. It just looks like something, or it can look like success, but from their point of view. So there is nothing is really real, because every single separated self, I'll take that back for a second. It's not that nothing is ever real, but every single separated self has their version of that thing. For example, here's some nail polish. So here's some nail polish. You that are watching here today, your separated self has a story about this nail polish. You do. You do. You have some kind of story about this. Now you might think about, oh, look, see, matches. This is the nail polish that's on my fingers right now, right? So there's all of these stories going along, and we're living in the subject-object reality. These separated selves are. And when that is what you would call living life. Today we're going to talk about, well, we're just presenting and pointing to this idea that is the never-ending search. That is the never-ending story. I just thought about that. Oh my God, never-ending story. So it's a never-ending story, right? A separated self thinks that something can be achieved. It thinks that something can be controlled. It thinks that something can be stopped. It thinks that something can be started. And in this communication that we're talking about here today, is that nothing stops, nothing starts, everything is as it is, or it appears to be as it is. The event in your life the event in the world, is all an illusion. It's all an illusion on some, not on some level, on a very real level. It's an illusion. It's a complete illusion. So what this separated self is looking for is what's already here, really. It's looking to get rid of, it is looking to get rid of all of this stuff so it can be right here, right now. Doesn't really know that, but that's the way it is. So as you move through the world, what happens is that, how do I say this? It can dawn on the separated self that this feels like a hamster wheel, that this can feel like the never-ending story. And suddenly something can occur to the separated self, but it doesn't really occur to it. That a glimpse of the, I would say, the truth begins to become apparent. And what that is usually there is a relinquishment of a personal will. There is a relinquishment of a personality. There's a relinquishment of a separated self. Because there doesn't always happen, and it can happen, it doesn't have to happen, is that the separated self seems to start to either melt away or be relinquished, right? So because in truth there is no separated self, there is no Max, there is no Nina, there is no whoever is here. That is a story, and when that begins to dawn on something, not to anyone because there is no one there, something begins to shift and change. There's no goal here. There's nothing to learn about any of this. But when this begins to happen, as it has become really is happening to this character, suddenly there seems to be a wisp of an energy of nothingness, right? So this is all energetic, that's for sure. And so this wisp of an energy of nothingness becomes all that is. So that the nothingness of the wisp of the nothingness is everything that there is. And so there's nothing to learn here because there's no way to try to get to that wisp of the nothingness. You can't do it because it would be you trying to get to your version of the wisp of the nothingness. And so there's no goal here. There's no trying to get somewhere, but because that would be, once again, the separated self trying to get somewhere, trying to accomplish something, trying to control something. There's nothing wrong with any of this. But what happens in the separated self's life is that there's that can be that spirituality, career, relationship, philanthropy, all these different things the separated self tries to do to try to find that, I'll just come back to that what I just said, that wisp of the nothingness, because it's really looking for, it's kind of like in the Course of Miracles, it says you think you have a million different problems, and you think you have this problem, this problem, this problem, and you think you can solve it with this, or you can get this, but you really only have one problem. And this is what the Course of Miracles would say, is that your one problem, there is no problems, is your perceived separation from God's source love, of unconditional love. your perceived separation from that. And it's because of that perceived separation that the separated self is running around trying to find that same feeling of being at one. And even in the Course in Miracles, it talks about it's the at one-ment, the atonement, right? So today, this is a time to talk about this, to ask any questions. You can say anything. There is no right or wrong. And so this is what we do here. We just sit and we talk, bring up some things. If you feel the need to say something or ask anything, clarification, like I said, nothing's right, nothing's wrong. So everything is welcome. All right, so we'll see what happens. And when if you want to say something, then just unmute yourself or put your hand up. Actually, just unmute yourself probably.
Yeah, it's Nina.
Hey, Nina.
Hey. So I hear what you're saying, but it's almost like, and I've asked this before. How do you go through your day? It's like if you don't have a problem, you really aren't here, and the separated self. It's just like day to day. How do you go through the day?
What do you do? What is going on? Okay, so look at it like this. So waking up happens. So I wake up. Oh, so then the cats get fed. And so then the shower happens, and then so the breakfast happens, and then this happens, and then planning the day happens, or it doesn't. It's just everything happen. Everything just appears to happen. And sometimes there is a plan, sometimes there is not a plan, sometimes there's nothing, but there is nothing already. There might be a difference in, I mean, there is no doubt a difference of how this character used to operate. That's for sure. It's very different. It's a very different orientation to, there's no trying to control, there's no trying to manipulate. There's just, oh, this is what's appearing to happen. And that could be sad, it could be happy, it could be confused. It's just really not really happening to anybody. It's just seems to be happening. It just seems to be happening. And so that's the only way I can kind of describe it. It's energetic. It's energetic, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I'll
try that. I'll try that on a daily basis, that this is just happening.
Yeah, I mean, you can try anything that you never
Yeah.
know. Listen, do whatever you want to. There's no right or wrong. So see what happens. See what happens.
Okay.
I mean, you can try that. I'm not here to give you an advice, but try it and tell me what comes up, Nina. I love it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Sure. Somebody has in the chat. Great question. Can I say something that came up when she asked that? Of course. Peaceful, because I'm not trying to control everything, and this is coming from a previous complete control freak. The separated self is a control freak, no matter what. Even if you don't have control issues, the separated self has control issues. For sure. There's no doubt about it. it thrives on control. It thrives on organizing the future. It thrives on reimagining the past. It thrives on trying to control your body, your weight, how you speak to people. It controls. It's trying to control everything all the time. I mean, I think that everyone here in this room right now would be able to relate to that. On some level, there is always a control going on. I should say this to this person at this time. I should do that to this, whatever happens to be. So everyone's a control freak. I hate to say that, Tiffany, because you're not special. No one's special. Like riding down a river, laying back and not trying to frantically paddle. Some people relate to this, and this is true for sure, that there is a go with the flow kind of vibrational field of this, of what we're talking about. But there's a big difference with that. No one is going with the flow. The flow is happening. But no one's doing it. It's just happening. And that's why we're laughing about, well, I'm special, you're not special, and all that stuff. But you know, in the Course in Miracles, one of the most powerful sections is the treachery of specialness. And I refer to the Course in Miracles a lot, of course, because you know it is a non-dual teaching, and there's a lot of pointers, not the whole thing, but a lot of pointers to what's happening, what's being pointed to in this conversation. And that section, the treachery of specialness in A Course in Miracles, is really important. Really important. Let's see. I was given this tool recently. Whenever my mind is trying to understand, make sense, etc., I whisper aloud, "Thank you for already resolving this issue. It has really helped." So that's kind of presupposing that things are already resolved. That's kind of like the what's it called? I'm going to say segment intending, right? Presupposing. Sure. That's not totally what we're talking about, but I think it's a cool thing. It's definitely a cool thing. I understand what you're saying, though. But the thing about what you're saying there, I was given this tool recently, whenever my mind is trying to understand or make sense. So right away, the idea that the mind is trying to make sense already is that there's nothing to understand. Yeah. And nothing to be resolved. Nothing to be resolved at all. Yeah, right. It does relate. I can see that. I can see that it does relate to the discussion because It's a very interesting thing, because the manipulating of the self, the trying to do something with the self, is an interesting kind of discussion. Like, there's no right or wrong, obviously. So does the self have to be manipulated? No, it doesn't really, because it's kind of like we're being told to manipulate it all the time, and so then the self can hear what we're talking about here, and then, not saying that you're doing this, but and say, oh, okay, well, then there's a goal. So I need to manipulate myself, so I get on that path of the allowing everything to be as it is, which is fine. But just notice that's the self trying to do that. Feels like a reminder. Yeah, sure. But and a reminder to who? That's kind of the question. Or just to look at, right? Who needs reminding? The separated self. There's nothing wrong with the separated self. Just, yeah. Some of this can sound, some of the what this work or this pointing to can sound like it's negating things, but it's really not negating things. It's removing kind of the illusion of a separateness. It's not negating, a separate self. It's just saying, oh, well, if the separate self is what it's being self-referential all the time, so you're self-referential, like I said, the I, but the I isn't real. Remember, the I is just a story. The I is just a story, and it's a conglomeration of lots of beliefs and stories and experiences, which is fine. But what I'm pointing to here is that tends to be what keeps the separate self alive, which is fine. Which is fine. But as this is, as I was saying before, as or if this begins to start to dawn on something, on nobody, um, there comes along with this, can come along with this, a great freedom. Now, I hesitate to say that, because then the separated self will say, like, oh, then I really want to do it because I really want freedom. But it's kind of like the byproduct of it is this incredible freedom that's just it is an open, completely relaxed, open energy, as opposed to a contraction, right? It's a as I used to always say, the feeling of relief is the vibration of God. It's like that, an expansive. Tiffany says it's amazing when freedom comes to lose. Oh my God, that's crazy. Yeah. It's amazing what freedom comes to lose your story. Example, I am not a victim. We're in sync there, Tiffany. One way, when we're talking about pointers or reminders or whatever, to look at some of what we're going over tonight, is that to look at, as Tiffany kind of has pointed to here, is to look at the labels. Look at labels, right? So if you look at labels in your life, that will give you a story. I am a son. I am a daughter. I am gay, I'm straight, I'm this or I'm that, or whatever it happens to be. Look at those labels, and then what are you without that label? And so victim is one of the labels. Victim is not one that the self wants to admit that it is, but usually is, on some level. So labels are something to look at if you're interested in that at all. Because the label is an identification. Identifies what the self has, like, I have a label. This is it. And there's nothing wrong with the label. But it's definitely not the truth. Tiffany says one can wear a label if it wants to, but mine were heavy, so I removed them by realizing there was nothing to remove. Yeah, yeah, that's fascinating. That's exactly right. Because the story that comes along with the victim is just another story, and that story isn't real anyway, so there's nothing to remove anyway. Separated self holds on very, very strongly to its labels. Very strongly. I am this, I am this, I am this, I am this. And when it self-identifies with those things, many times, well, just look at people that are very, very connected, that they have to make sure that they are a good person. They may have to make sure they are patriotic. They have to make sure they are moral. They have to make sure they are whatever happens to be. That is definitely a sign of being very, very caught up in the illusion, in the story, right? So whereas other people are much more like, yeah, they're not so, their separated self isn't as glomming on to that label, to that story, right? Because they're special, because they are special. Exactly. Hmm. And like, what's important is the special isn't always a positive thing. First of all, there's no positive or negative, but it could be like, yeah, the victim. I'm special because I'm a victim. I'm special because um, my parents treated me a certain way. I'm special because I'm an addict. I'm special because whatever happens to be. And that label is very intense for them. And if they're not that label, then they're lost. You don't know what you are. Not who you are, but what you are. Some more labels like a badge of honor, for sure. Hmm. Yes. For some separated selves, their label, it's for some separated selves are so separated, or they're so identified with the egoic separated self, that that is all that they know of themselves. That's all they know of themselves. Not all, but yeah. It's like that, always working to fix, to fix, to fix, to fix, to fix, to fix, to get that thing, to discover that thing, to fix themselves, because that's wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong and this. They're so, and it's not the victim. Maybe it's, I don't know what it is. I don't care. But it's like there's so, and so you could suggest to this separate self to be like, it's okay not to do anything. You don't have to try to fix it. Oh, they're like, it wouldn't be compute. You're like, no, 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 no. Understand, I'm on this path. I'm healing. I'm changing. I'm getting better. I'm getting better. I'm doing it. And then it's very, very difficult. And unless unless the separated self, if you say, you don't have to do that, you could stop. You don't have to do that. And then their separated self will take that like, okay, well, stopping helped me to change myself. Well, then I better stop. Do you see? Everything is always in service of healing this separated self. You understand why religions use this original sin concept, because the separated self is constantly telling it's like wrong, 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 fix, fix, fix. But nothing is wrong and nothing is right. Everything is exactly what it is. Right? Danny, hi Danny. When not separated, are the highs or lows like joy or sadness? Are the emotional states always in the middle? No, they're the same. They're just not, how do I say this? There definitely are highs and lows. There's joy, there's sadness, there's anger, there's whatever. But when it's really not happening, like when it's happened, this is, in the past, my story would have went along with the joy or the sadness, if that makes sense. So it would have been much more about my story and me relating to the sadness, or me relating to the joy, or relating to me relating. Now it's much more, there's a little wisp of the me still kind of lingers around, sometimes more than others, but for the most part, it's just a feeling of sadness. Yeah. Or there's a feeling, it's much, I'll just tell you this, it feels much more, my emotions feel, the emotional life feels much more truthful. When it's sad, it's sad. When it's freedom, it's freedom. When it's joy, it's joy. When it's love, it's love. It just feels more truthful because the story about the character isn't as involved in it, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, Danny? Doesn't have to, but that's the only way I can kind of describe it. Tiffany says, I mean, it's more, so much more joy, higher joy that I've ever felt. It's more. Okay. Sure. Nothing wrong. We did it again. Maybe sort of. Yeah, and Danny, there's nothing to understand really. But I definitely take your point and your question. I understand that. I get it. Sometimes I don't like saying things like that because then people go, oh, well, then I'm going to have to try to do that. Don't do that. There is great freedom, though, I have to say. The freedom is a great word. And unconditional. There's a lot of, I mean, because there's no right or wrong, so everything's unconditional. And living that way and having that is very different from everything having some meaning to it. There's no meaning to it. That's why it's like meditate or not meditate. Read A Course in Miracles or not read A Course in Miracles. Doesn't matter. So when an interest or something happens, it's more, it's just more truthful. I was gonna say authentic, but I don't like that word. It's just more truthful. You're like, Oh, yeah, that's right. I want to read the book, or I was rereading a book the other day, and it was just like, whoa, I love this so much. It was so exciting. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I love this so much. It was so fun reading that book. It's weird. It's hard to explain. Not like, oh, I read the book, I'm gonna read it again, and this is interesting. It was just like, huh? Oh, oh. So in that way, Tiffany, I can relate to what you're talking. Tiffany says, so much easier to experience the joy if you're not caring so much or trying to do so much or get someone else to change. For sure. For sure. Yep. Someone said to me the other day when I was, I put this up and then they DM'd me about this meeting. Do them basically once a month. We were doing more before. So why should I come? And I go, I don't know why you should come. I'm like, well, what am I gonna learn? I'm like, you're not gonna learn anything. That's not like that. It's a very different thing. There's a resonance with this or there's not, and it doesn't matter if it is or not, it doesn't matter. But it's difficult to say, well, this is what it is. It's going to be like this. Because first of all, there's obviously no script. There's not like when this character is teaching a class, there's we have a lesson plan basically, on some level. It's not like that. It's not like that. But why would you come to something like this? I don't know why you come to something like this, honestly, except that the only reason that I'm feeling drawn to sharing this is that I that I know if that this is happening for me, there's a wisp of it, something happening for other people too. And they might need a place to talk about this or say, yeah, and this is kind of like what's going on. I'm not sure. This could happen after you've been meditating for 50 years, or it could be happening right now, or you could be getting a glimpse of this and being like, well, where do I go to talk about this? What's going on? There's not, the people aren't really talking about it. There's nothing to learn about it. It's very experiential. It's very energetic, right? So yeah, that's kind of like, I found somebody that randomly found somebody that was doing something like this, and it really helped me a couple of years ago to be like, yeah, I'm not insane. That didn't matter. Probably am. Not really. Let's see, hold on. Even the non-existent coffee tastes better because I can experience it without thinking of all the things to do or what I should say to this person, or just experiencing the coffee, just enjoy what is. The accepting things as they are is a pointer, for sure. That's a pointer here, accepting things as they are. The problem, not the problem, but the challenge here is that there's no one to accept, because as soon as we say accept what it is, then there's a separated self that's trying to accept what is. Right? There's a pointer also to the present moment kind of thing. What's happening, what is happening, what's happening, what's happening, present moment stuff, which is what's happening. But there's a little bit of a misnomer in that can be too, because because if you say here, then there's a there. If you say now, then there was a past and there's a future, but there isn't. There is only one. There is only oneness happening. It is, and whatever is happening in that oneness is what's happening in that oneness. Right? So when you're trying to be like, I'm going to be here now, I'm going to be here now, I'm going to be here now. You know, Ram Dass had it right on some level. So, but you know, the ego can be like, well, I'm in the past. No, I'm in the future. Just come back here now. That's fine. There's nothing wrong. There's a pointer there, but just realize that there's only oneness. This is one, not two, right? So it's the atonement, the at one-ment of it all. Just accept, just not accept, just enjoy. Yep. What happens when separation isn't happening? Creation. Well, separation isn't really happening. That's in a story, it's separate, but separation isn't even really happening. It's not. It's not. What's happening is happening. Creation is happening, sure. It's just what's happening. When the separation, hold on one second, I just gotta go up here. Oh, hi, Erica. Good to see you. Oh, God, I gotta do it like this, maybe. Wait, can I do it like this? Hold on, everybody. Oh, come on. Shoot. I have to do this. Hold on. My chat. It's weird right now. Hold on. Come on now. Why can't I go up there? Oh, there. Okay. Okay. Sorry, everybody. I'm going down here. When the separation illusion is lifted, then, darn it. Darn. I'm trying to get to that and it's not letting me. My mouse is not working and I have to use this and it's being weird. And I can't get that smaller. When the separation is lifted, then please go down. Oh, God. Okay. You know what? Can you rewrite that or copy it again? Because I just can't get it. I'll read Erica's thing right now. I'm lately observing what's going on within me and what I'm feeling constantly and consciously directing me to feel joy, happiness, regardless of what's going. Takes practice, though. Sure. Okay. When separation is lifted, then what? There's it's kind of like saying no one really wakes up because the separation illusion is lifted. Nothing and everything. That's the answer. Nothing and everything. You've heard this before. I'm sure you've all heard this, a version of this, right? A version of this is everything changes and nothing changes at all. That's kind of the answer, if there is an answer. Not a great answer. So everything changes and nothing changes at all. Except everything changes. It's an energetic thing that maybe there's energy shifts or something, but it doesn't shift for anybody really. It's just shifting. It's changing. It's it's pure aliveness, that's for sure. It's pure aliveness. That's a part of it. I can say that. Yeah. Now everyone's going to be like, oh, I got to find the pure aliveness. And all the studying and all the years and years and years of reading and studying and applying and doing all the stuff, it did not prepare me at all for what this has happened. At all. At all. And it's not anything like whatever anyone's ever. I can't remember anything that I've ever read or was taught or anything that even slightly reflects what has happened. Nothing. Because it's beyond what can be said. There's something. Yeah. It's not like anything that you ever think. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, think of all the books that I've studied and read and all the training that I've had and everything that I've done in my many, many, many years. And what's happened to me is wasn't even on my radar at all. It was nothing of it, nothing. Really. Maybe parts of A Course in Miracles a little bit. There's a little bit of some things, but really nothing. And it can't be sad. It says, "Amen from the back of the row. All my religious study and training and learning and doing didn't either." Yeah. And it radically changed how I see so much of what my character used to believe in. Radically has changed a lot of that. Because I see that everything's a story. And I see that yeah. For sure. For sure. No doubt about that. My life coaching school where I excelled and got certified because I'm special. You're special. And that word is your favorite word too, Tiff. This isn't just happening, no thinking. Sometimes thinking happens, but I will say this, Danny, is that yeah, decisions just seem to happen. The trying to figure out the decisions, but this was starting to happen before all of this really dawned on this, whatever happened, is the trying to weigh out decisions and is this right or this wrong or is this, it's just that this, it seems so, it's so clear that there is no, first of all, there's no wrong decision, right? So there's never a wrong decision, which I knew even before all this stuff happened to me. There is no wrong decision. So it was a lot easier for me to be like, boom, okay, so, and it's not that every decision's like easy peasy. It's just not like what I said. It's not connected to a story so much at all anymore. So if it's not connected so much to a story to a person, then a decision is much easier because the person has an agenda. There's very, very little agenda here anymore. That's so a decision is like, it's a lot easier to be like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, sell that. Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. Right. Thinking does happen for sure. Not overthinking and analyzing and trying to, because the overthinking and analyzing thing always comes from the separate self trying to control or do the right thing. Do the right thing. Everything is the right thing. And when I say right, it doesn't mean that everything is always perfect. It's just that's the right thing. That answer your question, Danny? Yep. Yep. Okay, we'll wrap up in a couple minutes, everyone. What, anything else you want to say or ask before we wrap up? Thank you for coming tonight. I want to say that. Anything you want to ask or say? Make sure that if you're not on, a lot of you are watching me on Insight Timer. I'm there Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I'll be there tomorrow. Or if you want to, reach out to me at any time, you can reach out. I'm gonna do this. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Copy. Just gonna put this here. And if you'd like to make a donation, you don't have to, but it's there if you're interested. Then you can make a donation for my time here. If not, don't worry about it. Thank you for the safe space. Love you. Classes are enjoyable. Yes, they are. And I'll see you tomorrow on Insight Timer. Okay, everybody? All right. Have a great night. I'll talk to you later, everyone. Bye.